Oh, hey there. My name is Tim Murphy. Stop what you're doing right now and give me 10 seconds. I have something really important to share with you. Now, you're probably not happy with your job, and they probably aren't paying you the money that you deserve. Let me tell you about MercerCountyWorks.com. They're the #1 fastest growing job engine in New Jersey. And unlike Monster, Career Builder, and Glassdoor, Mercer County Works connects directly with employers to get your resume in front of decision makers. Okay, stop looking at me and go to MercerCountyWorks.com right now and upload your resume today.
And we are live. Welcome YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and my favorite, LinkedIn. Welcome to another episode of the Rise and Grind Show. This episode, we're talking about why your resume sucks again. And I have some special guests here with me today. But before we introduce them, I want to introduce my main man live from Qatar. Please tell them who you are.
Peace and blessings to the universe, everyone. This is your boy, your man, not your boy, Jay Tyler, coming from Qatar. Lucky to have all these panelists here today that are going to speak about the resume, one of the most powerful, marketing documents in your toolbox. All right. So peace and blessings to you. Let's get the show started.
Yeah, so if we could have our first special guest I want to introduce to our viewers is Miss Stacy Valancy. Please tell the viewers who you are.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Stacy, and I am a certified professional resume writer and career coach. And just a little snapshot about me. I have a background in sales. I sold everything from coupons and coupon books to houses and everything in between. And eventually I was recruited to be a recruiter, which I thought was selling jobs. But I quickly learned that it was way more than that. And so while I was recruiting, I met so many awesome people who just weren't a good fit for what I was hiring for. So I decided to quit my job in corporate America, go back, get my MBA, and launch my own company, Next Level Career Coach, where I help people get where they want to go in their professional career.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us here today. So next special guest I'd like to introduce is Miss Kelly Loudermilk. Please tell our viewers who you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Loudermilk, and I call myself a talent innovator, and my business is Build HR. And I have played every role that you can think of in the HR industry. I have literally built up 6 HR departments from the ground up for very large and small companies alike. I have been an agency recruiter. I have been a hiring manager, an HR manager, and a candidate. So I have that really clear perspective of why recruiting sucks in general on all sides, but what you can do at least to hopefully make it a little less sucky, at least for yourself. So that's kind of me.
Thank you for being with us today. And so last but definitely not least, my main man, Tom Powner. Please tell our viewers who you are.
Tom Powner. I'm the CEO of Career Thinker Incorporated. I also had a career in sales leadership, HR, business operations for 25 years, and I just got fed up with corporate America. So I'm proof it can be done. I resigned from a really good paying job and started Career Thinker 10 and a half years ago, believe it or not. I look back now, I wouldn't change a thing. Year 1, I would have changed a lot of things. But now I also do recruiting. So there's a career service side of Career Thinker, resume writing, career coaching, LinkedIn. And then we have a recruiting side. I have 3 recruiters on my team, and we do a lot of recruiting for a couple national companies. So I get to see the struggle from both sides. I'm also on the board of directors of the National Resume Writing Association, and I created and I teach the NCOPE LinkedIn course to certify people in my industry how to really unleash the power of LinkedIn.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for being with us today.
Yes.
All right. Well, Jay Tyler, let's get to it.
You know, Duncan, it's funny. I'm listening to Tom talk, and then I see your moniker, the connector. I think Tom is the connector. He knows so many people in the industry. So I think both of you should have that moniker and share it. What do you think?
There's enough room for all of us.
Okay, all right. I thought you would say that, right? All right. So before we begin, I have to do my the normal, I guess salutations before we go into it. So without further ado, let's do what we came here to do. You dig? Let's go. All right. So first question to start off everything, right? Let us know about your journey. I think we heard a little bit of snippet of your journey because I used to be in sales as well, and that's how I transitioned into HR, right? Tell us about that journey. What ultimately makes you who you are now in terms of becoming this resume writer and career coach that a lot of people lean on. So you don't have to, go in particular order. Just jump right in. So tell us about that journey before we begin our real questions.
Well, for me, I didn't think I want to be a resume writer, career coach at the age of 18. I want to be a photographer, a policeman, or actually a DJ. Here I am writing resumes and doing career strategies for people. It really started when I used to be the district manager for Caldor department stores. If you know Caldor, I'm aging myself. If you know Target, you know Caldor. They went bankrupt, and I was in charge of like 6 stores, and everyone's panicking. I just helped people with their resumes, and I created workshops. I wasn't an expert. I just knew what I knew. And years later, it just turned into a business. I just thought about what I did back then, and here I am writing resumes. And I don't call myself a resume writer. It's more of a career strategist. There's a lot more to the job search than a resume.
So can I ask? I just want to jump right in. I just want to fire some things off. So, do you have to be a certified professional resume writer to write someone's resume? And I'll preface that with I've seen people, right. I've seen individuals, that maybe executives in companies, and they always, they want to volunteer and say, oh, hey, I can help somebody with their resume. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, do you have to be a certified professional resume writer to write someone's resume?
I'll jump in now. In this day and age, it helps because there's a lot of best practices. There's a lot of it depends situations, and between the applicant tracking software systems, writing for the robot eyes and the human eyes, and today the whole process has changed from when I did my workshops in the 90s. So I think it brings credibility to your craft. You learn a lot of things, and you help produce the best products. You don't have to, but I think it really helps.
Yeah, to kind of jump off what Tom's saying, I mean, the first thing was when you have the letters and the credentials, it immediately gives you street cred. People know that you worked hard for this, that you're studying this, and so you know about it. I don't think it's necessarily vital, but when you are a member of these organizations and when you have this certification, you're also getting constant newsletters and emails and kind of staying up to date with the best practices for both ATS systems and human readers. So it just kind of gives you that leg up. So unless you're doing enough stuff on your own to really stay up to date with all the things that are changing minute by minute, it definitely helps to have that extra credential.
Okay. Now, Kelly, I think I heard you say no.
Yeah. I mean, I've viewed over 100,000 resumes. I've been doing this for a really long time. I've filled a lot of jobs from CIOs to frontline people on a workshop or warehouse floor. And I'm sure that, like Stacy and Tom, they probably are very well versed, just like I am, on all of these things. But I've written a lot of resumes that get people jobs because I may not be a certified resume writer, which is always, like Stacy and Tom said, it can definitely help having that expertise, but it's not necessary because I do what these people do every day with resume reviewing, going through the ATS. I know what's getting targeted. I'm working the ATS. I know what I search for. I've done the Boon Lead searches on LinkedIn. I know what hits, what doesn't hit. So a lot of those same skill sets that are probably required for certification, a lot of recruiters, agency recruiters, HR managers, really good hiring managers, not your standard manager you probably deal with, they have some of that knowledge that can help and maybe even be voluntary. But, if it is a voluntary type of help, keep a grain of salt in mind because every person no matter what system they use, is going to have their own bias of how they want a resume structured. And so it's a really hard thing to go through. And so the certification helps, but there are going to be a lot of people who have the skill sets that can still navigate it as well.
Okay. This is really good. Now, listen, Stacy and Kelly, you're not exempt from your career story as well, okay? So we're going to go back to Stacy real quick, right? So, Stacy, let us know your career journey. How are you here as a resume writer and career coach?
Yeah, so I know I kind of gave like the Cliff Notes version of it before, but like Tom, I didn't envision myself being a resume writer or career coach when I was growing up. I actually had no idea what I wanted to be. I was never like, oh, I really want to be a doctor or an actor or whatever. And so I kind of went through my whole life wondering what I was going to do. And even when I was in college, that's when I was like, okay, I need to make some money, but I don't know what I want to do with my life. So I got connected through a friend of a friend to get my first internship, which was sales. And I just kept selling. I love selling. I liked meeting with people. And then when I got recruited, as I mentioned, to be a recruiter, somebody found me on LinkedIn and I thought it was sales. And that's when I realized that my favorite thing about sales wasn't actually closing the deal or negotiating, although I do love those things. It was about the people interaction. So while I was working as a recruiter for Northwestern Mutual, which is a Fortune 500 company, I was also co-teaching classes at the University of Florida, talking about things like resume writing, what to wear to an interview, things like that. And so over time, that's when I realized, wait, my passion is actually helping people, but I have a huge fear of needles, so it was never in the medical world. So this is a way that I can kind of help people, and I love writing and talking with people. So this is a way that kind of merges everything I like. And then obviously working from home, being my own boss is, not too bad either. So
Agreed. Agreed. And Kelly, what about your story?
So mine's probably very drastically different from theirs, but I, like Stacy, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was groomed since high school to be a lawyer. A federal prosecutor took me under her wing and decided to groom me essentially all through high school and college. So my undergrad was business law. I got an internship with a Fortune 500 company in HR, no less, just pushing papers. And the national head of recruiting for all of 13,000 jobs decided to go on maternity leave. And they're like, well, we're not going to backfill her role, but since you're here, we'll just give you the training and you take over her role. So, fresh out of college, just taking this on. I gave a presentation about university recruiting specifically to a Rotary Club meeting. And a owner approached me asking for some help to prepare for a buyout by a large competitor. And I ended up having to create their entire HR structure and department and scale them, tripling in size and get everything done within like a very short amount of time. And I had to do a lot of Googling. So Google was my best friend. And that's kind of what started my career in HR specifically. And I've been very specialized in that smaller business, but doing projects for Fortune 500s as a consultant. So I've done the whole gamut, but so I'm more of the insider, I guess, versus like the helper. So I feel like with Tom and Stacy, like the three of us are kind of like those Avengers because they have those perspectives, but then I'm like the coach that's telling the managers how to read a resume, or you at least getting them through. So that's kind of where I've been. I've been all over the place, but it's been really amazing to work with companies as small as 3 people and as large as 15,000. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's amazing. That's a good story. And I love these stories because it's all different paths to the same point, right? That's the good thing about it. So I'm going to go ahead and because we have a new guest coming, but I'll go ahead in my story. I am a certified professional resume writer as well. I started in college. I was I was a poet in college. So, I wrote a lot of poetry, different things like that. So I wasn't a technical writer, but people knew I could write. And one day my friend said, hey, I need a resume. I'm trying to get this job at, this internship. And I said, okay, I'll write it. Let me see what I can do. So I did some research and everything. Our friend ended up getting that job 2 weeks later. It was like, hey, man, you might have a talent. I was like, all right, well, maybe I should look at this a little bit more. So people in my circle said, okay, write my resume, help me out, my application. So that type of passion was born into what, we do now. at Mercer County Works and things like that. So came from poet to freelance to like now professional in a way. So that was my snippet of a journey to resume writing as well. All right. Cool. So enough about me. Let's get into these questions for these panelists, right? This is the question that's going to jump it off for everyone, okay? What are the top resume do's and don'ts, right? I think everybody wants to know that. What should I do? What should I not do on my resume? So anyone can jump on and answer this question. I'm waiting to hear this one.
Well, for me, I do recruiting and resume writing. The biggest pet peeve of mine is when I look at a career experience section and it reads like a job posting. It's all function-based and not value-based. That's the
correct
biggest. I would say 95% of resumes I see, 94%, fall into that category. And that's why I'm in business, because people just can't seem to look at the value and front load bullet points that show me they were successful. And when I say successful, they don't have to, create, $5 billion in sales. There's so many different ways to be successful in your career. And most resumes I get look like a job posting.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. A lot of it is, that proof of success and the key accomplishments for sure is one of the biggest, things that will help you set apart what you did to make an impact. But I also think it comes down, especially to the extremists. And so what I mean by that is sometimes I get people who tell me that they need help with their resume, and they'll send me like a 10-page document in size 9 font and tell me that they can't cut anything, even though they've only been, in their career for 10 years, let's say. Wow. And then I get other people who are like, I really need a 1-page resume. I want it size 14 font, and they're C-level executives. And there's so sometimes finding that nice medium between getting enough information out there to pass the ATS programs and to excite the human readers, but not too much where you go overboard and have too much going on. I think that's a big do and don't, is finding that happy medium.
But Stacy, what is the actual happy medium? What constitutes a 1-page resume? What constitutes a 2-page resume? What constitutes a 10-page document? What is the rules behind this, or just your personal feeling? How do you know that?
I mean, there's definitely best practices. And Kelly, I want her to jump in on this one because, when you get these certifications, they tell you certain things. Like if you have less than 3 years experience or you're right out of college, it should be 1. If you're, you shouldn't really go on to more than 2. Maybe you can add an addendum for C-suites, but really a maximum of 2 pages. But then, I mean, these are not rules. They're just guidelines, because if you have, 10 years of experience, but you're, the field you're in is very snapshotty, and certain industries want it here and now, then 1 page is better. But for other places, maybe almost like an engineering resume, you need to put more information on there. So maybe even if it's only for 4 years of experience, you might have 2 full pages or a page and a half. But Kelly, you see a lot of this, so I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on this one, especially without the certification, what you're, historically.
So the only time you should ever have a 10-page resume is if you are applying for something in a university or a professorship. That is the only time. And those are usually CVs. Those are not resumes. They're very, very different. So because you're listing publications, things like that. So again, it depends on your position. It depends on the industry. I definitely agree with Stacy. If you're under 5 years of experience, that 3-year or a new grad, keep it under 1 page, because I don't really care what you did in high school. It's not really applicable. People who list experience that's older than 7 years old, I don't like that, honestly, unless it's a job hop situation, which some people do, because every 3 years people usually will leave for a raise, but it's not needed, because anything over 7 years old is now considered obsolete, in my opinion, from a usability standpoint, especially in technology firms. But my happy medium is around 4 pages if you have about 10 plus years of experience. If you're under that, you should be tailoring it. So if I have anything over 4 pages, unless you are including a cover letter, and if by that point you better be applying for a C-suite position, because I won't read it otherwise, that's my max, is that. But if you're a professor, absolutely, the heavier your CV, usually the better options you have for getting actual tenure.
Yeah, for me, it really depends. And in one word, relevancy. Whether you could have 2 jobs in 10 years or 5 jobs, and sometimes you go back more than 7 years. If I'm hiring a sales executive, I want to see a history of sales success. So if they only show 1 job because it's 7 years and they had 3 other great jobs before that, leaving the other 2 jobs off could actually hurt them. So it really depends. There's really no one answer. I really wish corporate America would do a survey. Recruiters have 1 and 1 page resume, but they don't typically hire from one. I did my own survey. 86% of people that are hired through our recruitment is 2 to 3 pages. What we want and what we hire from and what the systems get through is totally different.
Yeah, I think 2 to 3 is that sweet number, just in general. And my other biggest pet peeves, for the love of God, use a format. Like, I cannot stand paragraphs. I will not read them. And there are people who will. And I disagree a little bit on the functional versus value, because there are a lot of tricky spots with ATS readers, but also from people who may not have the ability to showcase value, because some places don't measure metrics or showcase value. Some places don't do performance reviews. And these are smaller companies, but these are a larger growth in America are smaller companies who don't have these things in place. And that's why they usually will hire my firm. But when you can't show value, or you don't know what your value is, or you can't speak to it in an articulate way, that's when a professional resume writer can help you. Or you can list that functionality piece to at least say that you were able to perform these things. So it's a good fallback, but it's not ideal. Obviously, value is way more important, especially when you can put quantitative data behind it. But if you don't have that to showcase, the functionality can at least showcase keywords that will hit on my ATS reader, that will pop you up in my Boolean searches. So that really helps sometimes too, if you don't have anything else to showcase.
But when I say value, I don't mean if you have KPIs, obviously you want to brag about that. But, even because sometimes I deal with college grads and they had a summer job and they were a waitress, and they have on the resume serve tables or serve drink specials. And, did you make good tips? Yes. Did you help sell the specials and drinks to drive up the average check? Yes. So that's where the value comes in. They don't need numbers, but they could actually tell great value stories by front loading each bullet point with some type of outcome, whether it's KPI, whether it's something written, written well that shows, increase the average sales and boosted my tips, daily tips by doing X, Y, Z.
But I think that's where the resume writer really comes in, because I think there is that happy medium. You need enough of the functionality words to beat the boss, essentially, and show that you have that knowledge and that hands-on expertise. But if you don't know how to articulate your value, if you don't get a performance review, if you're not given that, there are creative ways, like what Tom is saying. Maybe you contributed to the 5-star satisfaction rating on Google, but a lot of people struggle to figure out what the heck they did. And so that's where hiring somebody or getting help, when you sit down with them, I'm sure everyone here sits down with people all the time where they don't realize, and then all of a sudden we talk, we write up the resume, and then we get these phone calls like, "Oh my gosh, that's me! That's so awesome!" So sometimes
we're all really humble, right? We like to think that we're humble. There are some that we know maybe in our lives that aren't, but because of that, we don't brag about ourselves. So we undervalue our own proposition or our own accomplishments, and because of that, it makes it harder to articulate it. And that's why, if you don't have anything else and you don't have the ability to find somebody to support you, then the functionality can help. But partnering with somebody who can actually articulate that for you or tell that story is where that benefit comes in. So just, don't undervalue yourself either.
Yeah, a technique I use, because most of resumes just have function statements or job descriptions, and I'm straightforward. I created a marketing campaign to launch product ABC. I say, well, did the marketing campaign suck, or was it worth something? Oh no, it's a good campaign. So who did it help? What did it do? And before you know it, Pandora's box opens, and they start understanding what we mean by value. People get scared when we say value statements; they think of numbers. And a lot of jobs, like Kelly was saying, you just don't have metrics. So don't avoid the value in that.
And that's when you should hire me to help you set metrics, right? Help you grow.
Definitely. Now we're throwing around some acronyms here and some industry jargon, like the bots and ATS and all this stuff. So for anyone who is not fully familiar with what a bot is or ATS, can we explain that to the audience today?
Well, ATS, I use them for two companies to recruit for, and ATSs have a bad rap, applicant tracking software system. A lot of people say, I get rejected. I'm not getting hired because of the ATS. What the ATS system helps is the recruitment team spend time and write resumes. Right now, we're hiring for outside sales rep in Long Island. We get 267 applications in 5 days. I will not pay my recruiters to read 267 resumes. So they go into the ATS system and can look at resume that's scored against the job posting, whether it's 85% or better, or actually put another key sorting word in there, or another Boolean stream of other type of words to, read 25 resumes, not 267. And that's really what it comes down to.
So there's some compliance pieces to this as well. So I had a job posting for a very large company for an internship. We got over 750 resumes. This is where I had a large lesson to learn, right? I was still pretty new. And I read all 750 resumes for this position. And it took about a while. But I learned from a compliance piece with EEOC, especially with reporting, and that's the Equal Opportunity Commission. And that just means that every organization has to report on their applicants, especially if they're a federal contractor, the type of diversity that they're collecting. And if you have 700 resumes or 200 resumes and you do not collect them or view them all, there has to be a random selection done to compartmentalize without any subjective information when it comes to viewing, for you to still be considered compliant if you were to be audited by the government. Because if you don't have that actually documented or showcased in some sort of process, they will say that you decided to discriminate based on who you hired. However, the bots are basically algorithms or system settings that are built to help be more objective in your job searching on the opposite side. So I'm able to do a keyword search, and that if your keyword searches are on there, and a keyword is just an ideal scenario where my job description has this many words of what I need as a skill set, and your resume has this many words. And if there's a lot of linkage and a high percentage, you're going to be hit more frequently when I search for that word. And that means you're going to pop up from an objective scale. So what Tom did is that he sorted these through based on the system and the bots to pick objectively qualified individuals. The bot helps to take that mundane or manual piece of compartmentalizing or randomly selecting people from large application pools to a much more objective and easier process that you could showcase to the EEOC if you ever did get audited. But a bot is a fancy word for an algorithm or a setting profile to eliminate those who would not meet the needs of the position. And some can unfortunately be a little subjective, but that's a whole nother conversation.
I love your explanation. I'm more hard hitting, but I love that. Thank you. You said what I said in a more elegant way.
That's why we're here, Tom. We got everybody that's different, right? I love it. I love the different answers and the diversity of those answers.
Well, I mean, my point is, people just feel like people blame the ATS system. Even if a human being looked at the bottom resume, why would I probably even call that person? There's no synergy. I can't tell you how many people apply for jobs. We're hiring a building manager right now. We have people that work in a shoe store. Nothing wrong with working in a shoe store, but they have no management. They never manage a building. They don't know even half the skills. And so we need these systems to help us out. Otherwise, we're spending too much time reading resumes that are irrelevant.
Yeah.
Definitely. I will say from a candidate experience, and we've all been candidates before, right? Like, I mean, Stacy's owned her business and Tom has started his. Like, I've been a candidate. I just got another full-time job on top of my consulting, right? Because we got
congratulations.
Thank you. Yay, more money. But essentially, it's one of those things where sometimes it feels like you're throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, most people I would like to assume that most relevant adults will apply for positions that they're qualified for. Unfortunately, women don't tend to apply for positions unless they are 100% qualified. Men tend to qualify for positions they feel they're 40% qualified, and that's where we see a lot of diversity issues. But you will see people apply very similar in the case of Tom's example because of unemployment. You have to apply to so many positions on a regular basis and showcase that. Some systems like Colorado actually require you to fill out your job search information in order to claim your unemployment benefits. And so you will see people who will just apply to anything and everything without reading. And also you'll see on Recruiting Sucks Reddit thread, if you ever want a good laugh, go there. A lot of people will say recruiters reach out to me when I'm, way overqualified. And so there are bad tastes on both sides. And unfortunately, we hear about the bad pieces versus the good. But just keep in mind, from a candidate perspective, there could be a ton of reasons why that happens. And it's in some cases, it can be a numbers game. If you ever look at Data is Beautiful on Reddit, you'll see how many people apply to so many jobs and like how it like fans out demographically, or just how they got to an offer. And it's amazing to see, because some people will say they've applied to 2,000 jobs and over 50% of that never even got back to them about their rejection letter. Like, it's ridiculous. So I will say, from a candidate perspective, it sometimes does feel like you're just throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. And that's really suck, but that's a whole nother systematic error that exists in corporate America that I try to work with my companies in trying to change that. It's a newer trend within recruiting itself.
So let me jump in.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Stacy. I was
going to say, so a lot of the people, a lot of the candidates, it's easier also to say, oh, the computer screened me out, which, like, yes, maybe it did screen you out, but there was a human that decided how to screen you out by using the computer. And I think that's kind of like the misconception here. The whole thing is the humans are setting the words. So I was working with somebody who was very frustrated, who called me and was trying to get a customer success manager role. And that is all about customer service, customer success, account management. Those three terms were not even on their resume that they were sending to me. So forget the robot. Why would a human want, so there has to be like a little bit of thought process too, because the humans are telling the robots how to help them. So the people that are submitting it to the humans, then the robots need it, we all need to think about what we're doing here.
Yeah, the accountability piece. We all want somebody to blame for our problems. Yeah, I blame my dog.
So like as a resume writer, or if you're on the recruitment side, right? We hear this all the time. Oh yeah, I can check a resume in 6 seconds or less, and I can tell if I want to move on with a candidate or not, right? So how do you really know in 6 seconds or less that a resume is really good or not? And if you do know, is it really 6 seconds? Is it 30 seconds? If it actually beats the ATS?
So I've done this because I read that article based on the eye movement that they did. And for some of my more entry-level jobs, yes, I can do it in 6 seconds. And it is because primarily you're formatting. If you don't have formatting and it's just a large body of text, then you don't have the organization skills and the detail-orientedness that I'm looking for to be able to structure something the way that I need to in a process mapping scenario. But at the same time, grammar, for the love of God, spell check, because they will get underlined in some of my ATSs, as well as just with that formatting, submitting as a PDF versus a Word, because it will manipulate in the system. And when that comes through and I can't see it, or if it's got text bottled up because of the way it got manipulated, then I'm not even going to spend my time looking at it. So for a little bit more lower entry, yes, 6 seconds is doable because you're usually doing like a one-page resume. When you have more complexity and you need to see results, a glance, like a 6 second glance, just to see, is it worth spending more time on? I think a lot of people do, and then they'll invest that time. But it's just one of those things where like simple little minute mistakes could be that difference in that 6 seconds. Formatting, spell check, and grammar, and just making it easy to find the information I'm looking for. And just if you're out of college, education on the top, I want to know that. But if you've been out of college for 5 years, put it at the bottom. I don't care as much because I care about what you've done at that point. So there's just different kinds of formats that you can do per position.
You could put a $500 ring in a Tiffany box and it looks like a $5,000 ring. So I agree with Kelly, that first engagement, the visual appeal, if it looks crappy, I'm going to assume they can't communicate. I'm not trying to be rude, but there's so many things that goes into the visual appeal. So once you take my engagement, then I'll spend some time, get a little branding statement on it, get a summary that's robust, that tells something about you that I don't know yet. There's so much you can do in a resume, but 6 seconds, I think, in general, as a whole rule, I don't totally believe in that. After 15 seconds or 20 seconds, if I'm not engaged and I don't see some value, then I get very disenchanted, and then typically I go on to the next one. There's no formula. I think it just depends on each individual resume too, and job.
I think we also live in a world where we're very quick. And so everything that Kelly and Tom said, like, totally echo that. Don't need to repeat it. The other thing though is we live in a world where it's emails, or it's no longer a phone call, it's a text message. It's no longer an in-person meeting, it's an email. It's like everything is getting shortened and shortened and shortened. And so if you can't, attract the reader, if you can't keep their attention, they'll just move on. Like, how many times have we all just sat through our phone on whatever your preferred social media is, whether it's Reddit or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn. And if something doesn't get your attention, you're just like scroll. And it's kind of, unfortunately, the same way with the resume. So you got to think about that behind all this, it's still that human element.
And Kelly said something earlier about paragraphs. A bullet point has 3 lines as a mini paragraph. I'm not engaged to read those. So, short 1-line bullet points are front loaded with some type of value or contribution. I'll absorb a lot more value about you quicker. I don't read paragraphs. They could be there for keyword density in the job description, but we're natural. Not that we're trained to read bullet points, but naturally our eyes go to bullet points first. At least that's my experience and my recruiters. Short, sweet bullet points.
Yeah, interesting. So this is another question I have too, because this is a thing that a lot of applicants definitely don't know what to do, especially if they don't have a traditional career path. And so I know a lot of times we tell our candidates or our clients to say, make a reverse chronological resume. That's what, recruiters want to see. But what if they're more of a functional resume type of applicant? What if they're more of a hybrid type of applicant? Or even a CV, what if they're like a medical practitioner or, academic? How do we know who gets what and who should be submitting what in terms of a type of resume?
Well, I do. We create a lot of hybrid resumes for more senior people that might have been in the workforce for more than 10, 15 years. So we have the reverse chronological on top, and then we have previous career experience with no dates. We're going to cherry pick the best part of the previous career experience, so that works. Mm-hmm. Functional resumes, they don't work. They don't score well in the ATS system, so doesn't mean they're not going to work, but it's going to be more about the networking and getting your resume in front of a human being first, instead of applying. You still should apply because they're going to ask you anyway. But you have to, in my mind, you have to do a lot of networking. I don't know if you guys agree with that, you ladies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about when you can, reverse chronological, traditional. The time where the hybrid comes out is just like Tom said, when you're trying to avoid some potential age discrimination. So that's when you might take the recent part, you might put that, that block of experience, and then drop the additional career experience to the back, because like what Kelly also said earlier, it's kind of like the what have you done for me lately mindset. So it was great that you were a server 25 years ago, like maybe you got your feet wet in sales or customer service, but that should be like one little nugget at the end in like an early career. So for me, I love reverse chronological for most early to mid people. I'll go with a hybrid when it counts. I am not a functional resume person. I don't think they don't parse well through the ATS systems. That's not how they're meant to work. It almost seems like a cop out. I don't understand. Like, you can, in my opinion, a lot of the times that people choose a functional, it's because they're afraid. Like, for example, if you had a lot of contract work, but you can just say that in your story, completed a 4-month contract, did a 3-month contract, and put 3 bullet points under it. And so then they'll see, okay, if they're not a job hopper, they were doing contract work. That makes sense. So sometimes you can proactively overcome what you think is a shortcoming.
Yeah, functional all the way, throw it in the trash. Don't waste my time. I will never read a functional resume. I think it's a waste of time. And like Stacy said, it is kind of a cop-out. It means you're hiding something personally. reverse chronological is the go-to. It should be your default. And I cannot stand the people who start at the beginning up top. They'll do the tradition, like the old school. And I'm just like, for the love of God, why am I wasting my time with you? So I like to give everyone a piece of the doubt, right? Like, just in case, because you will find some really amazing people just because they don't know how to do something properly when it comes to a piece of paper. But reverse chronological should definitely be your go-to. As you get to executive level, yes, I think a hybrid makes more sense because then they really care about that functionality piece on top of the chronicle. So I think, and that's when you start to see a little bit of a heavier resume anyways. But again, the default reverse chronological all the way.
So how do you address, I guess, gaps of employment, in the resume? Because that's something that I don't see addressed well in the resumes. And so, like, what do you say to your clients on that?
So do you know that LinkedIn, by the way, is about to start something? So I know that this
Stay-at-home moms.
Stay-at-home mom is going to be an option for
Wait. What about stay-at-home dad? Why does that be mom?
The article was stay-at-home mom, but I hope it's stay-at-home parent.
Ahead,
that would be more
I'm
inclusive.
serious.
It's true.
But I think that kind of attests to what the way of the world is right now. And hello, COVID, like, that everyone was afraid of employment gaps. And then now everyone just thinks that if your employment ended in 2020, it was due to COVID anyway, whether it was or wasn't. And so I think that kind of taught us that employment gaps are not the devil. It's not something we should run away from and hide from and lie about it. But I think we should proactively address it. So if you did something during that time, learned a language, volunteered, you were a stay-at-home parent, if there's anything you could do to say that you did something during that time, that is what I do. And I specifically put that on the resume. I'll put like, took a sabbatical for 6 months, whatever, traveled Europe and learned Spanish. If you could show that you did something, and then you can make it to the interview, and then you could talk about, lessons learned or skills learned or experience learned in that time.
Yeah, I think also we're afraid of gaps. It depends how long the gap is. If it's a couple months, I started career thinking in the last recession, and gaps were just gaps. They were part of life. Now we have COVID, gaps are gaps. So again, if someone took 4 years off their career, right now I'm working with an accountant. She's 2014 was the last time she worked. So she made a conscious decision to be the home caregiver to take care of her sick mother. So we didn't go into much detail, but we put that on the resume. Made the conscious decision to be the staying home parent, staying home to take care of the sick relative, and we didn't need to put much more in. And people, this is real life. When we get more senior, when we get in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, this is just part of life. So don't be afraid of it.
I would say like it really depends on how long the gap is and how recent it was. So for example, if I got somebody who had a resume that had the last time that they worked in a very technical specific role, like 10 years ago, I'm probably not going to think that their skill sets are current. So showcasing that you kept your skill sets current by saying I supplemented by working on projects or going back to school. But I do think it does deserve its own line if it's something that's pretty open that you're willing to discuss. If it's a short amount of time or even just a year, I think most recruiters and hiring managers, at least with COVID, a lot of the trainings that we have done with managers is that like it's a lot more normal. And I think a lot more people are waking up to that normacy, which is good. But if it's like multiple different years and there was a reason for it, I think that's important as well. The way that I've had some of my friends budget is they'll do Upwork, which is a freelance website, and they'll do projects and they'll just list maybe like what they did in the meantime as projects. And so they still look like they're employed. But I think a lot of that stigma that if I'm not, like, I will say the saying is, if you're employed, that's the best time to look, like, because it always is, right? But at the same time, that is no longer a necessity. Like, I don't think that's where our eyes go anymore because of COVID. Like, I think that has really woke a lot of people up to remind them like, hey, people lost their jobs and it has nothing to do with how good or bad they are. Like it could be a whole nother mess of things. And so gaps are a little less taboo. And I think as we mature as a workforce, they will become less taboo over time when more people are realizing I need to go back to school or I have other things that I need to take care of.
So can gig work be a substitute for your gap in employment? So if I wanted to, if I lost my job and I went and drove Uber Eats, could that be a substitute?
I've done that. I've done it myself as a substitute, and I've seen resumes that showcase that. And like hiring managers, it depends on the manager. Some managers think that's great that like they saw that this was a gap and they couldn't find something. They found something that it could do in the meantime. It shows dedication to work. However, some managers take that with a grain of salt, and they're usually not the best people managers to begin with. So I think it really just depends on what type of position or gig work you're utilizing and whether or not it applies. If it is like an Uber Eats scenario and you're applying for customer service, again, like what Tom and Stacy said earlier, go back to that values piece of like delivering customer service and saying that this was, a gig and list it as a gig. And make it very clear that it's not like a forever thing. But at the same time, if you don't want to put it on there, I've had people who don't put it on there. And that's okay too, because it has nothing to do with what they're applying to and the employer doesn't care. So it just depends on the situation.
For me, when someone's, being a consultant, a consultant is a real gig economy. And they just have the year, then they just put a paragraph. If you can back up that you have clients, you don't have to give the clients' names. I want some type of story underneath the 5 years of consultant. Otherwise, what happens is a lot of people use consultant as a filler. And then as soon as I interview them, in a matter of 2 minutes, I could tell they did nothing. So,
And I think that kind of goes off of, I agree with that. I think you need to be able to back your stuff up if you're going to put something on the resume, unless you're putting like stay-at-home parent or caregiver, which are self-evident. If you're going to put consultant, you need to have 2-3 bullet points like you would anything else. Just like if you're going to take work off of Upwork, you need to say completed a project for a client for a full website design. Or maybe you say something like used my XYZ skills to do voiceovers for their campaigns. Whatever it is, you need to be able to explain what you did. And it's interesting when you talk about people wanting to leave stuff on and take stuff off. I had somebody who took time off to be a full-time caregiver and then was volunteering at her like local community center, was teaching spin classes, like cycle classes at the gym, and leveraged that and tried to get a job working the front desk at a gym, saying how much she liked it and the interaction with people. So sometimes if you can leverage what you did, if it's something totally, I don't want to say bizarre, but different, that can also help you too. So it's all about trying to use what you have into what you want to do next.
Yeah, you're your own marketing. You're your own marketer.
Yeah, and I want to jump in on what Stacy has said. You said something about the bullet points, right? And I feel like a lot of times, if you're looking at our most current position and then the previous one before, how do I know how many bullet points I should put in for the achievements that I've done or things like that for my current job versus the previous one? Is there like a certain like number? Like, do I do 7 for the current one, 5 for the next one, 3 for the one after that? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
So it's hard because there's best practices and then there's also what works. It depends on the level of experience. It depends on the industry. I don't want to just keep saying it depends, but it does depend. But like if you're an executive and you've worked at the same place for the last 25 years, you might have 10 bullet points. If you're a recent college grad, you only have, a little bit of work experience, maybe it's only 2 or 3. My personal rule of thumb and all the stuff that I keep reading through NRWA and CPRW that kind of support it is the ideal for mid to, kind of, let's call it the middle land of the middle land is 4 to 7. Because that's what a lot of the studies that I read show, that unless you're executive or you've been somewhere a while, after 7, people are, things are getting lost in the middle. But less than 4, it almost seems like why isn't there enough? Why haven't you done more things? So I think 4 to 7 for most people is a happy medium. But of course, you can always have less. You can always have more, depending on your individual situation and the industry that you're in and what they prefer.
Just to piggyback, it does really depend on a lot of different things. So how many years at the position? If someone's at a position for 7 years and 1, 2 bullet points, I'm not impressed. And if someone's at a position for 10 years, and let's say they're an operations manager, which is the mid-level, I like to take the bullet points and put them into categories: leadership enhancements, operational improvements, top line growth, and have 3 or 4 bullet points underneath each of those subheadings, because it really drives the conversation and makes it easier in the eye of the recruiter. And an operation manager is going to zoom in on operation bullet points. HR manager is going to zoom in at a leadership point, and at the end, they read all of them.
Yeah,
if I see 12 bullet points laying on top of each other, it looks like a big paragraph anyway. So.
Yeah, and that can help in some cases, especially if you have a lot. I think 5 to 7 is a really good number, just because if you drone on and on and on. How often are you restating the same thing? And so like in my resume, I've done the exact same thing for probably, 10 plus years. And my bullet points are pretty much very similar from, bullet point to bullet point for each company or client. And so it's either like you consolidate what's repetitive. And so if you have a similar situation where you are just growing in your career, where you do a lot of similar work, then you probably don't need it on like your most recent one because you're already showcasing it on another one that you have that skill set. So it's just, I think 5 to 7 is a really good number, even from a managerial perspective. But again, it really does depend. And I would just caution, like, don't be repetitive or say the same thing a different way, because we can see through that very clearly.
Mm-hmm. I think it also depends how many hats you wear in each position. Some people wear one singular hat. So, having 5 bullet points could be super powerful. And then someone who wears, has a position that has many different hats, you might want to separate those out a little bit.
Oh,
and it's relevance, and it's like Kelly said earlier, it's what have you done for me lately that counts the most. So there's so many things that goes into that discussion.
Yeah, I have it's crazy how this conversation is making me think of so many other additional questions, right? So this is another one that's non-scripted, but you guys rock. I mean, you really rock because you're answering everything on point. So how do you get to a point where, a lot of applicants say, I'm tired of tweaking my resume for all these jobs. Like, how can I tweak it for 48 jobs? So like when you're looking at like a resume that actually will beat the ATS, tell me the relationship between the job description and then the resume itself. Like, what has to happen between both of those things for you to have more success to beat the ATS and to at least get a call back for interview?
I'll jump in. I normally do. So I'm sorry. There's a couple things. Yeah, when we write resumes for our clients, the core resume write is going to be pretty damn close to most jobs they apply for, unless they do a 180-degree switch and start applying to jobs we didn't write the resume for. But you should take the time to tweak the resume. Sometimes adding a few keywords could actually push you up a little bit in the ATS system. And also, if people get tired of doing it, and we get tired of reading resumes that are unqualified. So look at the opposite end. And also, when you look at job postings, some job postings are so vague, anyone should apply for it. And some job postings, they have 40 qualifications or 50. And normally job descriptions are written in order of relevance. So if you're short for time, look at the top 10 bullet points, what they're looking for, and especially make sure those are in the resume, and then take time, if you have, to do the rest. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I don't think you need like 17 different resumes. When people come to me and they want me to write them, I had somebody last week who wanted 10 different resumes, and I was like, no, this is like this is not going to help you. It's only going to make you more stressed out, and then you're going to come back and want 10 more. And so what I think it comes down to is, if you are applying for the same thing, if you are applying to be a product engineer at an innovative digital technology company, if you look at 5 or 50 job descriptions, a lot of the keywords that you're going to see are going to pop up. They're all going to ask for the same qualifications or very similar. They're all going to say the same descriptor words. They're going to be very similar. And so if you look at those job descriptions, as long as you're applying for the same realm, you can pull the things that that they're looking for. Now, of course, as Kelly and Tom both know, when you're on the other side, you can change up the words and make it more specific. So yes, every company is different. Every job posting is different. But if you have a specific target in mind of your function and job and even company type, you should be able to go with the one resume system. However, I like to include like an areas of expertise section, or for executives, career highlights. And that's the place where you can make those easy changes. So I'll put like a little list of words, essentially, like in a column format or otherwise. And you could go in and you could see that if they wrote customer service 17 times, make sure that you put that in your section. Or if they say creative problem solving, make sure that that's in there. So you can make minor changes, but don't drive yourself crazy, because if you have the right resume, it should work for most of the systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's really validating to hear as somebody who's not certified, because that's what I've been preaching to the choir for so long. And so I'm like, hey, at least I don't suck at this. So absolutely, I tell all my family and friends who tell me to do their resumes, it's per position type. It's not per position posting. My husband's a really good example. He grew up in a recruiting agency lifestyle for 10 plus years. And then he went to school and got a data science degree and completely changed his career, halfway through. So he has very two distinctive resumes per the job type that he applied to after his, coming out of school as a, protected class type scenario. So, there was a data scientist resume and a recruiting sales resume for the positions that he applied to. And he didn't have to tweak them necessarily, except for very small specifics. So per type, not per position. You would be surprised how many of these job descriptions are not filled out by the actual manager, and they're filled out by HR people who have no idea what they're supposed to be filling in, especially for the technical roles. Yeah. And so I would say for those generic job listings, please be patient for those who have don't get the support from their managers they need.
And another thing, the ATS systems, there's over 200 of them on the market. 6 of them dominate 80% of the market. And today they're cloud-based. They're always updated. They're a lot smarter than the ones from the late 90s and the early 2000s. Acromans, Cinnamons, lots of times they'll pick that up. So you still want to make sure it's matched as much as you can, but you'd be surprised they're a lot smarter than they used to be.
So I want to throw this question in here, and it's really more of a scenario. So I knew of an individual that actually lied on their resume, right? So didn't even finish high school, but they put that, they had this amount of job experience. They went to college and was actually able to get a job doing sales and was pretty successful in it, right? Just online, over the phone sales. And so I guess really as hiring managers and individuals that write resumes, clearly you're going to discourage that, but I guess how as a hiring manager do you catch things like that?
Well,
interviewing.
Yeah.
Well, you can smell BS from a mile away, and it's just training managers how to interview. And there's a lot of ways to determine whether or not they're lying, if there's conflicting information, if it seems kind of very vague, and there's just ways that when you've done it for so long, and I'm sure Tom and Stacy can speak to this as well, there's this sixth sense that you kind of develop where you can tell. And it's really hard to describe, but it's just one of those things where you get really good at your craft. You can smell it from a mile away. And as an internal HR person, our job is to train managers on how to interview properly outside of just the compliance questions, right? So those are the things that we can determine in an interview process very quickly. Even from an HR standpoint, if I get on the phone with you, I probably have enough information of the job itself to know when you're telling me BS versus not. And that's another key thing that a lot of recruiters, especially internal recruiters, have. Agency recruiters, not so much, because their job is to push resumes through to get fills. So they're a little bit of a different type of call. But if it's an internal scenario, we can smell your BS, and your background check and your education verification, all of those things that may be required, may not, could catch that as well. So that's another risk you take. So if you do get through it all, then props to you. I mean, that's what the show Community was built off of somebody faking a lawyer resume and making it win for them. Obviously he did a good job, but that's not going to happen in most cases because we'll be able to tell.
Mm-hmm. And it's just not worth it. Twice it's happened with companies I worked for. People lied on their resume. They said had a college degree and they didn't do a background check. Today, background checks are farmed out for the most part. So you have companies that specialize in that. Right. And they got promoted within the company to the point where they got promoted to the level where they created this bio and they kind of did another background check on the person because they're getting into big promotion, and they lost everything because they lied 10 years ago. Wow. So there's probably some even big CEOs this happened to, I think, a couple of years ago. But as Kelly, you said, it takes that one question that you ask that you lose that trust in the candidate, and then you keep digging, and before you know it, you realize they're lying.
Yeah.
And it also depends on the level of lying. I had somebody who said that they were fluent in Spanish, and they had an interviewer who started speaking to them in Spanish. And if they would have just said that they were conversational, it would have been okay. And so sometimes I think people are so afraid to tell the truth, and this is kind of like the old stigma with employment gaps, like tell the truth, because it's better to potentially tell the truth and get through on something else, like your determination or your hard work or whatever it is, or the extra courses you took on the side. Because if you get caught in the lie, it's 4 times as bad, because now you lose the job or you don't get the job. And all these recruiters talk to each other. You'd be surprised, when I was recruiting, I was talking to a lot of other people who were recruiting similar candidates, and we're like, oh my God, did you hear it? Like, whoa, I had a crazy experience like that too. And of course, confidentiality, we're not going to say the person, but if you do something bad, word gets around.
So your parenting technique, right? Like, don't lie to me. Your ears will turn green. We can tell.
And that's why like LinkedIn's new. So why I do like recruiting through LinkedIn. So if someone says they're proficient in Microsoft Word, I get actually request them before I go further interview to take the Microsoft Word quiz through LinkedIn, and they're not easy quizzes. Same thing with Excel. A lot of these software programs, you get requests the people, your candidates, to take the quiz on LinkedIn. So I mean, because people lie all the time. They say that they're proficient in Excel, they can't do pivot table, they can't do VLOOKUP, and it's like, well, you're not proficient. So
that would be more like an expert level, in my opinion. VLOOKUPs are a whole nother beast than a pivot table.
That's a line of demarcation if you know it or not. Yeah, you can't do VLOOKUP.
I'll do a pivot table, but a VLOOKUP, it's a different conversation.
A little tough. Dunk, you were going to say something, Dunk. Go ahead.
I think, and just to go a little bit into deeper into what Tom said. So let's just say if you had somebody that lied on their resume, and maybe they start off as a mid-level executive and made it to that CEO spot. Obviously, it's a question of integrity, but if they've done, a job so well where I can go from, a mid-level, manager to a CEO, does it really matter at that point?
Well, how about the message?
It's a type of lie, big time type of lie.
Yeah, I mean, what message it says to your whole team? Lie and you'll be successful. I mean, that to me is crucial. So I look at it that way. It's and education, one of the biggest things. It's harder today because, like I said, most background checks are formed at the company that all they do is they know all the tricks. They know how to get the information quicker.
Right.
Well, and once you discover one lie, you start wondering, like, what else did they lie about? Because that's what tends to happen if you don't tell the truth. Like, you lied about this one little thing, and then you're like, well, did they call the customer? Did they send that email? Did they do whatever? You start to now question everything, and it just goes into a spiral.
Gotcha.
And if you notice with education, more and more companies are putting that as a preferred requirement, because we're in a whole different age where sometimes education is not the most relevant, depending on the type of role.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit so we can think globally, right? Because we are in a global society, global economy, things like that. So take someone like myself, who I live and work in Qatar, right, for the past 4 years. It is a lot of candidates now that are looking outside of the country for jobs and things like that. So is there a difference between what resume that I will give as an international candidate for somewhere versus someone domestically? Yeah. Like, what does that look like? So can someone break down that difference between that?
So I've actually recruited for positions in Liechtenstein, Spain, the UK, and Germany. And so they are very, very different, and they don't have the regulations that we have. In Spain specifically, I've had clients ask, they want a picture, they want the age, they want the marital status. It's a very different scenario. And in the UK, a lot of the times you're never an employee. You are more of a contractor, because unless you terminate it in person, technically they can't terminate you. And that may have changed since the last time I had dealt with that, because somebody actually evaded termination and still collected a paycheck because the person couldn't get terminated in person. And so you will see a lot more scenarios where it's a contract relationship overseas versus an employee. And so the biggest thing is it's international is very CV focused. It is a very different type of way of writing, a very different type of requirement, and it is much more invasive into your personal life. You have a lot more protection in the United States and a little bit more privacy depending on how you are on social media, depending. There's a lot of variances there, but it is a whole another ball game when you go international.
Well, I mean, I do a lot of clients in the UK and Singapore, and the resumes are quite aligned to US, but I think it depends on the location. There's different variables all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it also, you have to watch your terminology too, because I was working with somebody who came from South America who kept telling me that she was a marketing manager. She would market for projects. And after lots more conversations, we realized she wasn't a marketing manager. What she considered marketing the projects, she was really running the projects, the budgets and the oversight and things like that. And she was really looking more at a project manager, project coordinator role. So something to just watch out, what things are called in certain countries differ from country to country.
True.
Yeah, Stacy, I would definitely say that because, I mean, from my experience, right? I'm in the Middle East, right? So they definitely want your picture. They definitely don't want a resume. They want more a CV. And so that was something that was very different, than I'm used to in the US, where a resume is standard, right? And they definitely want to know every job. So they want to go back from when you graduated college and kind of see all the jobs that you have done. And they don't care if it reads more like a job description. They really want to know like what you have done. So they don't really care about the career achievements as much. Obviously, if you're really good as an applicant, you'll do that and you'll put your achievements on there, your value adds. But it's a little bit different. And it's a lot more of like if you're married, your health, questions that you would never, ever ask in the US or never put in the resume. They want to know those things. So it really does depend, like Tom said, on variables. This depends on where you're applying to. That's my interaction with the international scene from at least my perspective, Middle East.
And you can be applying to an international company that's based in the US, and that also dictated too.
That's a good point. If
you're going to apply internationally, just make sure you have a work visa or that they support it. Because if you're going to go to Germany and say, I can get a job. No, if you're not able to work there with a visa, you're not going to get a job, honey. So
don't do that.
Keep that in mind.
That's 10 to 20.
Definitely. Dunk, you have something to add on that?
Yeah. So now that I have a separate question
cool.
From this, I'm comfortable working here in New Jersey. I don't think I plan to go, overseas. So
you sure? It's nice out here, man. Yeah.
So I guess my question was, and Tom and I talked about this before, and Justin, you and I have talked about this before. Really the future of the resume, right?
Yeah.
So where you see LinkedIn has, began to create its own, own format. There may be, really the digitization of resumes, and also video resumes are really starting to come in to play as well. So I just kind of want to get a sense of where are resumes going.
Well,
So,
good.
Sorry. So I love this topic because I have a lot of people that just say, I'll just network and, go on LinkedIn. And some people never, that's what they do. And that's great. But those are very rare. The resume is not dead. Even if you think it's dead, it's not dead. You need it.
Yes,
and a lot of people underestimate it. And my fun phrase is, if your resume doesn't work, neither will you. I love that phrase because even if you go through friends, and even if you network, and even if you're all over LinkedIn, at some point you might need to give a piece of paper, even as a formality, to a hiring manager or the head recruiter or whoever it is, and they need to see something, and there's a chance that they might look at it and say, oh, no, this person's not a fit, or, oh, this is weird, or, and you start to kind of pass it off and see that. So the resume is not dead. Yes, if you could get around the online application system and get referrals and network, that's definitely the better way to do it. But I don't see the resume being totally phased out anytime in the near future. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's like 20 plus years in the near future, but I don't think it's happening that soon because something else has got to replace it. And, what is that?
Tom and Duncan might say something different.
I'm gonna.
This is my I think you're wrong moment.
I'm not. I had this conversation all the time. I'm not disagreeing. I think we have to understand the word of what the resume. It's going to live someplace different. I recruit for 4 companies. 2 companies I recruit for haven't posted a job in 4 years. We recruit 100% through LinkedIn. A lot of my clients get found on LinkedIn, and the resume is a secondary. So it's not. At some point, you need to share that because it's a document. It's an agreement. But we should talk about the content of the resume. That's going to always be needed, whether it's going to be in a digital form, whether it's going to be LinkedIn or something else. We're entering a digital phase. So at some point, the content, your story, your brand is going to be needed, whether it's on a paper resume. I think at some point, the paper resume is going to be obsolete at some time. And whether LinkedIn is going to have a box where you check off saying, this is the truth about my career, and we can use the LinkedIn as a resume, I see that happen at some point. Because right now, you can put anything on LinkedIn or anything on a resume. When you hand a resume off the application process, you're agreeing that this is the truth about your career path. LinkedIn doesn't have that validity yet, but hopefully it will someday. So, not disagreeing, but not fully agreeing. At some point, I haven't bought a movie, I haven't bought a CD, a record. Everything's changing. So
do you think the resume will stay alive? It just won't necessarily be like a Word or PDF doc. Like it'll live. The resume will exist just in a new
you're both
format.
Technically correct, but you're also a little bit wrong, and I'll tell you why. Because this is a systemic. This is a systemic thing, right? We have no control over the trend of the resume, regardless of predictions. There is a systemic system that dictates how you receive a job in our nation. So until that system changes, which we already know is not going away anytime soon, then it will not change at all. So what I mean by that is a resume will always be required in the near future and probably at least 10 years from now, whether that is a PDF or Word document. It is required legally to have an applicant apply online with this information, whether that is a written application or an online application, to be legally accepted as a candidate according to the EEOC. So even if you're a referral, you will always have to have this piece of paper, and it always goes in your file, especially if you're in a medical career or in a laboratory or some type of certified entity. This is required, and we will make people actually do resumes to put in their files to showcase for audits. So the resume is not going away. However, where Tom and Duncan are correct is that the content will change, and not where it's housed. It will always live in a paper format for as long as resumes are alive, for as long as these systems require a paper documentation to be uploaded. But the storytelling of your personal brand, of your jobs, of your humanity and your impact will change. So it's not so much the format that will change, it is the content itself that will change and how you tell your story. Some of the most biggest influencers in the resume industry, Work It owner JT O'Donnell, she preaches this from day one of her entire career, is that we are taking out that inhumane piece, and we're putting that more into context as we progress as a society in the workforce. The Human Roadmap author, I forget her name right off the top of my head, but she's also a very big influencer in this area. And it's about becoming more humane and more human. More HR influencers like Brene Brown, people like that. We are trying to change the workforce from what we were taught to be more human. And 2020 really catapulted that. So in a way, both parties are correct, but they're also wrong. The paper document will never go away in any way, shape, or form until the systems themselves change and the overall systematic approach of how we review and select candidates changes. But the content located on that individual placeholder will definitely transform in the next 5 years to be a very different story.
I think you're not looking quick enough into the future, because with blockchain, I could go to someone's digital LinkedIn, and that blockchain, when I download it, at that point, that's what's downloaded. That's what's in your file. It's all connected. So I'm not disagreeing 100%, but I think it's going to be a lot shorter than we're talking about now. Blockchain is going to change everything. I can look at someone's profile, and it's going to be a blockchain, and that's it.
Yep. The resources there for blockchain aren't available as readily as we need them. They're not being developed quickly enough. That's why there's a shortage and why there's a demand in blockchain, because people can't mine it. My brother mines Bitcoin for a living. So the thing is that the blockchain is great, but we don't have the technology nor the capability to keep up with the demand right now. And that's why it's not going to progress as quickly as a lot of people hope. It will be quick because we transform very quickly every day, but I don't think it's going to be like in 2 years. It's going to be at least 5 years before you see a very major transition.
Right.
I will say that the entry level, I think, blockchain developer, I think is starting at like 75,000. I think that's like the median salary. Just throwing that out there. I think they're starting to look for blockchain developers. So I'm gonna give a little bit of an Otis to Duncan and Tom. I think they're right as well. But I think for this segment, since I'm the judge, myself, Kelly, and Stacy, we put that baby to bed. No, I'm joking. But I think both sides are on point.
I think it's more the timing,
Yes. I think so.
I also think that what may occur hasn't even been imagined yet. Like the jobs my kids have not even been, that they will have because they're so young, is not even invented yet. So there's a lot of things that we don't even know are capable or possible yet because there's not been an innovator. And that's, again, like the whole recruiting system from a systematic level. I'm sure Tom and Stacy have a lot that they could comment on as well from their perspective. But from an agency and internal perspective, and what I coach people on is, it's ridiculous. It's a whole nother thing that needs to change.
I mean, the amount of power the job seeker and recruiter has with LinkedIn. I could look at bosses I worked with 20 years ago and just see everything. It's amazing the reach we have, and that's just going to get better and better. And obviously, there's going to be pitfalls that come along with that. But I'm on the technology side.
So we have one more question. All right, before we wrap up, and so want to make sure that we get Stacy to answer this question first. LinkedIn. And the format of LinkedIn, because some people say, I just copy and paste my resume on there. That's all I do, and it's good. It looks great. Is that really the best way you should go about LinkedIn? Or is there a certain science or way that you would present your information on LinkedIn as opposed to your resume? So Stacy, I know you have to go soon, but can you answer that question first before we go around to the panel?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love LinkedIn. I actually had my LinkedIn. I think I had to make it for a project in college and was never really taught how to utilize it, and just started getting active on it last summer. And oh my gosh, it is awesome. Both candidates, job seekers, friends, I've made mentors, coaches. I'm like the biggest LinkedIn lover over here. But to answer your question, no, it should not mirror your resume. LinkedIn, it's kind of like your own personal landing page, in my opinion. It's your chance it's like your website. It's your chance to build your brand. And yes, you need to have information on there. So if you hit that easy apply button, or when recruiters seek you out, that you have keywords and phrases, that you have proof of success. So you have a lot of that, especially in your experience section, and that your education, volunteer, all that's up to date. But for me, and the biggest thing I've been reading about online, is a couple of the biggest things to look for is your headline. It's the first thing that recruiters see before they even connect with you. So putting account manager, I mean, you have 120 characters, like
220.
Utilize them if you can. Oh, 220, thank you. So utilize them if you can. And then the other thing is the about section. I mean, we're all checking each other out. This isn't a dating website. Let's not go too far in the other direction. But this is a chance for you to be a human and tell people what you like. I love solving problems. Like, helping people find jobs is my driving force. This is a chance for you to go beyond just your resume, especially that about section. I believe is like the place that people make that decision. Like, do they want to work with you, be your friend, talk to you, hire you, have a conversation with you? And it is so underutilized by so many job seekers who think it's just supposed to be like an executive bio. So that's my rant on LinkedIn.
Your LinkedIn profile is really your cover letter. It's your new cover letter, because nobody reads a cover letter anymore. But at the same time, just like Stacy said, I love this, metaphor. It is your landing page. Like, I have a patent. I have, publications. People in HR don't have patents or patent pending products. But that's something that you could learn from me. I've designed a restaurant that has nothing to do with HR. Like, I have my blueprint back here from when I did it, but it's under my projects. So it's a really great way to tell a story of what you are capable of and what you're successful that you don't always get to brag about in other areas. And it's also just one of those things where you do get to be human. Like you would see on my bio that I love karaoke and I rock out in the car. And my very first job was being the mouse at Chuck E. Cheese. And in HR profession, you'd be like, oh, what? Like, and that was what I did. So you can have a little bit of fun with it, but it should be a deeper dive into who you are than your resume. And your resume is your business card. Your LinkedIn is your handshake, and that should solidify the deal.
Right. In my perspective, I look at the back end of LinkedIn. LinkedIn under the hood is nothing but a huge database. So when you talk about the back end, we want to make sure there's enough data points in your LinkedIn profile to get you found in the searches. And the headline's important because it's one of the places that are indexed first for keywords, the job title line, and the skill section. So we want to pay attention to keyword density and keyword diversity. So you show up, because I use LinkedIn Recruiter, so you show up high in the list. Beyond that, then you have to speak to the human-facing part of it. The about section is super important. I agree, Stacy and Kelly. I want to know how you do things. How do you drive top-line success? What's your leadership philosophy? Why people like working with you? I want to know more about your core. The career experience section, in my world, I think it should be a close mirror to the resume because it is something I'm really interested in. And as Kelly was saying, there's another 12 other sections in LinkedIn that people underutilize. The project, the certifications, the publications, the patents. There's so many other sections of LinkedIn that you could add more. My motto is a great LinkedIn is born from a great resume, and your LinkedIn should be a resume on steroids because there's so much more that you can learn about someone on LinkedIn. So
Definitely.
But understand, it's nothing but a big database, and bad data in and gets bad data out. It's just simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Definitely. Well, we are at the conclusion point. That was a nice breeze of an hour and 20 minutes, I'm telling you. A lot of information in there.
I'm ready for a part 3. I still have more questions.
Yeah, me too. I'm be honest with you. I got a lot of questions too, but trying to hold myself back, show some maturity, But let's wrap it up, okay? So first thing, I guess we could do this is the takeaways. If someone came on here right now and just didn't see this and is like, oh, what did I miss? What's one thing that you would tell the audience member who missed this stream? What would you tell them?
On the resume topic? Yeah. On the resumes is making sure you're relevant and current. Technology is changing everything so quickly. Jobs are changing, what we do, but make sure you're relevant. And don't be afraid to show your personality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways is definitely when you're writing a resume, yes, you want to consider the bot or the ATS program, but you also want to consider the human, both the human who's going to read it and the human who's programming the bot or the ATS program, what to screen out and what to look for. So I think kind of keeping those two readers per se in mind when building a resume is super important.
I would echo those. I would just say, recruiting sucks on all ends. Like, it really, really does. And a lot of people do it bad, and a lot of people are really good at it. And having patience is important, but one way to make it one less bit sucky for you is to make sure your resume is formatted very clearly with very clear, distinctive, descriptions of what you've valued, completed, or done in your job, but then also, just for the love of God, spell check and use grammar. Like, it is a lot more impactful than you realize. And the way something is spell check may be different because some places will recognize UK spellings versus the US, and some managers will draw a hard line for that. So it's just like contextually understand what you're applying to. But grammar, spelling, and format, I think, are the bare basics every resume needs to make it a little less sucky.
All right. Love those takeaways. And then, for the last question as well, Stacy, we'll start with you. Where can we find you on social media? What's your website? How do we get in touch with you?
Yep. So my website is just what my business is. It's www.nextlevelcareercoach.com. Also, please have conversations with me on LinkedIn. I'm not going to say follow me or add me, like me, whatever. Like, let's actually make a connection. Don't just click follow. Like, comment on my stuff, send me a message, tell me if you like this, if you want help, if you want an opinion. My name is Stacy, Stacy, Valancy, V like Victor, Alancy. I post every day, sometimes twice a day. Let's be friends, help each other, inspire each other, lift each other up.
All right. Thanks, Stacy. Appreciate that. Kelly, where can we find you on social media, your website, anything else that people can connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm available on pretty much all aspects of social media, even though I'm horrible at being social. So my website is yourhrsource.com. So it's just yourhrsource.com. I am primarily for businesses. So I do business to business. But from LinkedIn, you can find me on any type of handle where it's yourhrsource.com. Or you could even see my handles are Kelly A. Loudermilk. There's not very many Loudermilks out there. So it's a little bit easier to see. So all of my extensions are shortened to my name. And I'm more than happy to connect or chat, or like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm working on a book to be published this winter with New Degree Press. So if you follow me on one of those, you'll kind of get to see my journey and my discoveries as I do my research and my interviews. So it's kind of a little bit more fun, I guess, than normal.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Good luck on your book, and congratulations on that job as well. And then Tom, last but not least, where can we find you on social media or LinkedIn? 'Cause I know you live on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, Tom Powner. There's only one other Tom Powner. So it's easy to find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. And connect with me. I have a decent sized network, and a lot of people I'm connected to are HR, recruiters, and sales professionals. So connect with me. That brings my network closer to you. And careerthinker.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, but typically LinkedIn is the best place, and for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we are at the end of the journey. This was an amazing conversation. I'm telling you, I had like 10 more questions in the vault. But maybe we could do this again. Resumes are super important. Shout out to Kelly and Stacy. We still believe in the resumes a little bit. No, I'm just joking. But listen, it's a great conversation. Duncan, let's end the show. Take us away with your parting shots.
Well, definitely. So we want to thank all of our viewers for staying with us tonight. On
Yes.
why your resume sucks again. And I just want to leave you with this: that yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. Thank you. See you next time. Peace.
I'm here to tell you about Mercer County Works. This premier job site solves a problem I think most of us have. The job market is competitive. There are many jobs everywhere, but real job opportunities seem few and far. This is Mercer County Works. It's a job site exclusively designed for you. You can apply for jobs like any other job site. Yet the difference between Mercer County Works and other job sites is Mercer County Works contains jobs for Mercer County and its surrounding areas. Job seekers like you can also benefit from resume and career assistance to rise above the competition and land the interviews that you deserve. Whether you are looking for six-figure jobs, remote positions, internships, or freelancing roles, you can apply confidently for career opportunities in the area. How does it work? It's simple. Visit www.mercercountyworks.com. Search for jobs in the area. Apply for career opportunities that interest you. Not really satisfied with your resume? Then click on the Upgrade Your Resume button on the homepage to get career advice and have a professional resume writer review your resume for free before applying for jobs. On this job site, all career opportunities, supporting job seekers, recruiters, and employers with their diverse job needs. Exclusively designed for you. Real jobs, real resumes, real results.